An ocean-going merchant ship was passing through a stretch of sea when it was unexpectedly struck with great force. But when the captain, Blondie, heard it might be a deep-sea monster, he appeared unusually excited. Then, he shouted happily for his men to turn around to catch the monster for money. But as soon as his men turned the merchant ship around, they saw the monster suddenly accelerate to 100 meters, ramming towards the merchant ship again. The spray it kicked up was immense. This display instantly silenced the previously arrogant Blondie. "Turn around, quick!" At this moment, after another fierce impact from the monster, the ship's hull was instantly torn open. The violent shaking caused everyone to fall flat on their faces. Watching his men in disarray, Blondie was also at a loss. But as the captain, he quickly calmed down and directed everyone to escape. But he was only halfway through his words when the merchant ship began to fill with seawater through the breach and listed severely. Seeing the mooring ropes on one side of the deck, everyone rushed towards them. Those who were quick enough to grab a rope were temporarily safe, while those who were too slow were done for. At the same time, due to the violent shaking, the mast also broke at this moment. People kept falling from the ship into the sea. Everyone's situation was perilous. Just then, the wealthy young lady and her maid lost their grip on the rope due to exhaustion. Just as they were about to collide and fall into the sea, they managed to avoid each other with quick reflexes. But the person behind them was clearly not so lucky. Watching the men who failed to stop and plunged headfirst into the sea, the young lady and her maid froze in place, breaking out in a cold sweat. Soon, the entire merchant ship sank to the bottom of the sea. Fortunately, many managed to get on lifeboats at the critical moment. Just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the monster suddenly reappeared beneath the lifeboats. But looking closely, they realized there was no monster at all. What attacked them was a giant submarine. At this moment, the nuclear submarine surfaced. The people on the lifeboats cursed loudly at the sight. Blondie even shouted, "Why did you wreck my ship?" Hearing the curses, a handsome young man climbed out of the submarine. This young man was no ordinary person. He was Captain Nemo, who would soon journey 20,000 leagues under the sea. Now he stood majestic and imposing, but just a few hours ago, Nemo was a pathetic prisoner eating prison food. This day, according to prison regulations, all prisoners had to go out for labor as usual. But today was different. Their spirits were high, because next, they were going to the East India Company's shipyard. They had planned for a long time, intending to seize a ship and escape. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Then, the soldiers had all the prisoners line up to enter the Nautilus. After their handcuffs were removed and their feet washed, Nemo and his group went to work in the ship's control room. Next, it was time to move the ship out and arm it. But the Nautilus's engineer disagreed, insisting that some parts of the ship were not yet properly designed and they couldn't proceed to the next step. Since the engineer had spoken, the others had to listen. After that, the engineer and Nemo exchanged a knowing look. Nemo instantly understood. He then immediately gathered his companions to board the ship. But due to the presence of soldiers, only about half of them managed to get on board. But they couldn't wait any longer. If they missed this chance, they would never be able to escape. Then, with Nemo's command, he and the few beside him began to act according to the plan. First, they silently took down the nearby soldiers. Soon, they had seized the soldiers' pistols. Then, Nemo used a speaking tube to tell the other brothers to make their move. In a short while, they had taken down all the soldiers on the ship. Now, the control of the ship's interior was in their hands. Everything was proceeding smoothly according to plan. If nothing goes wrong, something is about to go wrong. When Brother San saw the formerly arrogant soldiers all knocked out, the petty men started doing a dance in triumph. Suddenly, the gun in his hand fell and went off. Everyone around jumped in fright. Fortunately, no one was hurt. There was no time to deal with this useless teammate. Hearing the gunshot, soldiers outside rushed towards them. They had to get the ship moving and leave immediately. But the ship was currently tied to the shore. To untie the ropes, they had to confront the soldiers head-on. Luckily, from the soldiers they had just taken down, they had seized a lot of weapons. A fierce battle ensued between the two sides. Because Nemo's group had overwhelming firepower, the soldiers brought out their trump card. With a Gatling gun, efficiency soared. Nemo's group was quickly suppressed, unable to fight back. If this continued, the soldiers would eventually subdue them. So Nemo seized the opportunity, and with one burst, took out the machine gunner. Seeing this, a companion tried to run and untie the ropes. But the soldiers were no fools. Another soldier took over the machine gun and opened fire. Nemo's companion was hit by several bullets. Nemo was devastated by the sight, frantically wanting to save his companion. Fortunately, the others stopped him in time. Going over would have been suicide. Luckily, the shot companion threw the kerosene lamp he was holding before he fell. The rope was finally burned through. Seeing this, the engineer quickly started the engine. Then, the giant Nautilus slid smoothly into the water. The soldiers on the shore were completely stunned. Not only had they let the criminals escape, they had also lost a ship. Subsequently, the engineer directed the people around him to lower the control levers. At this point, the snorkel extended from the hull, and seawater rapidly flooded into the ballast tanks. Thanks to the ship's stiff metal hull, the soldiers' bullets were easily deflected. Next, Nemo came to the control room to pilot the submarine. There were large reefs underwater, and it was pitch black. Nothing could be seen. Nemo had to navigate very carefully through the crevices of the rocks. At this moment, everyone was so scared they didn't dare to breathe. They were afraid the ship would hit a reef and sink to the bottom. Then everyone would be done for. Fortunately, Nemo was bold but careful, successfully piloting the Nautilus through the reef field. Afterward, after reaching safe waters, Nemo piloted the Nautilus to breach the surface. Everyone was overjoyed. They had finally escaped from prison. But things were certainly not that simple. After all, they had stolen such a large ship from the shipyard. The company owner would definitely send people to hunt them down. And that was indeed the case. When the owner learned that his prized ship had been stolen, he immediately dispatched a large force to capture the thieves. Meanwhile, the Nautilus was sailing normally underwater when it was suddenly and inexplicably hit. Nemo quickly checked the situation through the periscope. He saw that it was the cargo ship ahead that had hit them. A closer look revealed it was a company ship. Preferring to avoid trouble, Nemo prepared to give way to the cargo ship. But the cargo ship became more aggressive, turning again to ram them. In that case, Nemo decided not to hold back. The two ships then accelerated towards each other. Nemo, using the Nautilus's ability to dive, quickly submerged below the surface, preparing to ambush the enemy from underwater. But no one noticed that because the Nautilus was still unfinished, its turbine had already malfunctioned. The cargo ship was then sunk by the Nautilus. The survivors on board escaped to the lifeboats. Then, Nemo allowed the women and children on board the submarine. The soldiers who had been knocked out were all sent to the lifeboats. I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Then you'll be looking in the wrong place. Now, the two sides had completely broken TIs. Afterward, Nemo piloted the submarine into the depths. He thought these two small broken boats wouldn't cause much trouble, but they were found and rescued by the company. After being rescued, Captain Blondie was immediately summoned for a talk. The high-level executive, Old Bai, explained the importance of the Nautilus. To monopolize global trade, they decided to expand into other countries' markets. That's why they spent so much money and effort building the Nautilus. Blondie was called in to help get the ship back. Blondie agreed, as he also wanted to find Nemo and get revenge. Then, Blondie asked Old Bai for 3 ships. He swore he would bring back the Nautilus and the prisoners. Seeing this, Old Bai took Blondie to meet another captain, his confidant, Uncle Beard. Afterward, they showed Blondie the ship to be used to hunt Nemo. The sight completely dazzled Blondie. Before them was the first battleship in the history of the British Navy, the Dreadnought. Its delivery date was fast approaching. Old Bai believed that with this ship, capturing Nemo would be a piece of cake. At the same time, Nemo and his crew were in trouble. Because they had left in a hurry, the food on board would not last long. Now they had 2 more women and a child, plus a dog owned by the young lady, Amy. The situation was very grim, and their current location was not safe either. If they stayed in the Kutch Peninsula in western India, they might be found by the company's man. So the engineer suggested they should go to France. There, they could repair the submarine and refuel. But Nemo disagreed. He felt the submarine didn't need repairs. And he had a secret plan. That was to pilot the Nautilus to the North Sea. It is said that a Spanish treasure fleet sank there. He wanted to find the treasure in the sunken ships. Once they got the treasure, no one would have to worry about making a living again. And the engineer could use the treasure to fulfill his dream. While Nemo was saying this, he didn't notice Amy eavesdropping from the stairs. Then Amy found Nemo. She asked him when he would let them go. It turned out, the reason Amy was on the cargo ship was that she wanted to go to Mumbai to see her fiancé. Everything was fine, but then Nemo abducted them. Suddenly, a strange sound came from outside. Everyone rushed to the control room to check the situation. A bizarre scene unfolded. Swarms of humpback whales were following the submarine. No one had ever seen such a sight. They were all stunned, their jaws agape. But this situation was not normal, because humpback whales live in the deep sea, and they hadn't dived to that depth. Realizing this, everyone rushed to find the cause. They looked, and what they saw was terrifying. The depth gauge showed the submarine had dived to a depth of over 100 fathoms. This water pressure could crush everyone into pulp. At that moment, Amy came and shared her idea. But Nemo said women should stay aside and do embroidery, and not cause trouble here. Just then, the equipment in the submarine all stopped working. Everyone panicked instantly. At the same time, the submarine was still falling. Due to the increasing water pressure, the thick hull began to groan. But no one had a solution. If they didn't do something soon, they would all die here. Nemo panicked completely. He had to ask Amy for help, saying that if she could save everyone, he would do anything she asked. Then, Amy told everyone her idea. That was to use a manual pump to supply air to the submarine. Then she told everyone to install the wooden handles and connect the compressor to the balancing ballast tanks. They needed to pump air into the ballast tanks. If there was enough gas inside, the submarine would surely float to the surface. The oxygen inside was running out. They had to hurry back to the surface. So, everyone immediately started to act. Everyone frantically pumped the handles with all their might. But the submarine continued to descend. Looking at the depth gauge again, they found the reading had reached 200 fathoms, and the number was still increasing. But they had been following Amy's method for so long, and it had no effect at all. Perhaps they were going to die here today. When it rains, it pours. Because they had pumped a lot of gas into the ballast tanks, there was now very little oxygen left inside the submarine. Everyone was dizzy and light-headed from lack of oxygen. At this point, the depth gauge pointer had reached 320. This meant the submarine was now withstanding the pressure of 530 meters of water. Although Amy's method had pumped air into the tanks, it was clearly not enough to make the submarine float. In a little while, the submarine had reached a depth of 700 meters. By now, the engineer had completely collapsed and couldn't move. Even the dog was about to suffocate. Meanwhile, the maid, who had fallen to the floor, heard a constant hissing sound. She turned to look and saw that the connection of the inflation pipe was leaking. Seeing this, the maid immediately told Amy. Amy quickly tore a strip of cloth from her dress. After soaking the cloth in butter, she quickly wrapped it around the leak. Nemo saw this and quickly used a clamp to secure the connection. Then he used a screw to seal the connection tightly. Seeing that they had found and solved the problem, everyone quickly got up and started pumping air into the tanks again. At this point, the water in the ballast tanks was finally all pumped out, and the submarine began to rise. Everyone was overjoyed. Amy had successfully saved everyone. Soon, the submarine rose to the surface. Everyone could finally breathe normally. Although everyone survived, the crisis was not over. Because they were still in dangerous waters, the company would probably be chasing them soon. The immediate problem was to fix the faulty power system. Meanwhile, Blondie had gathered enough men. He and Old Bai were already prepared. Then, a large number of soldiers followed the two of them onto the Dreadnought. They were determined on this trip. They would surely recapture the Nautilus and Nemo's group. But Blondie and the other men didn't notice that a handsome shareholder had also boarded the ship. This person was Count Henry, who happened to be the fiancé Amy was going to see. Meanwhile, Amy and her maid were packing their bags. Because she had saved everyone, Nemo had agreed to first take her to a safe place. Actually, Amy quite wanted to stay on board. After all, the journey was thrilling and exciting, and she had been interested in physics and engineering since she was a child. She had even studied with her father, but now she needed to find her fiancé. She had to say goodbye to everyone now. Soon, Nemo docked the ship by the shore. Amy and her two companions came to the deck. After saying goodbye to everyone, she jumped down first, followed by the maid and the rescued slave, Zhao Hai. But when it was the dog's turn, it refused to jump because it was scared. Seeing this, Zhao Hai quickly went back to comfort the dog. At this moment, Brother San and the Bengali boy also wanted to leave, because following Nemo was too dangerous. They could be recaptured by the company at any time. Most importantly, if they disembarked here, it wouldn't be long before they reached the Bengali boy's tribe. At the same time, Nemo and the engineer were repairing the submarine. But after tinkering for a long time, they made no progress. Suddenly, a crew member came in and reported that someone had run away. Nemo and the engineer rushed to the deck to check. They saw 5 people in the sea. Just as Amy was about to reach the shore, she saw many soldiers with guns on the shore. They were from the company. Seeing their hostile intentions, Amy got scared and quickly turned back. But her dress was too cumbersome. She immediately threw it into the sea. At this point, the soldiers on shore saw the woman turn back, and without a second thought, started shooting at them. Hearing the gunshots, Brother San and the Bengali boy also swam back quickly. They were so scared they almost wet their pants. The soldiers even rowed after them, shooting. If they swam any slower, they would have died there today. By now, Amy and her maid had reached the submarine. She went straight to the control room upon boarding. After pulling a hairpin out of the electrical box, the submarine's equipment all started working normally again. Everyone was completely stunned. She was truly a resourceful woman. She would do anything to leave the submarine. Then Brother San and the other men also climbed onto the submarine. Just as the lone Zhao Hai was climbing up, the soldiers behind him caught up. They grabbed Zhao Hai's foot. At the critical moment, the dog bit the soldier's leg. Seeing this, Zhao Hai quickly ran into the cabin, but the dog's little legs were too slow. By the time it jumped into the cabin, the soldier behind had already pointed his gun at Zhao Hai's head. The next second, a hen suddenly grabbed the gun barrel. Then the bald man quickly closed the hatch. At the same time, the submarine, having vented its air, began to submerge. All the soldiers on the deck fell into the sea. Just like that, they successfully evaded the company's capture. But this place was clearly not safe. They had to unite to get out of here. The problem now was how to deal with the 2 deserters from just now. Afterward, Captain Nemo gathered everyone. However, he did not punish Brother San and the other man. Instead, he told the crew about their current situation. The Nautilus was the company's most important asset. Since they had stolen it, the company would absolutely not let any of them go. The company was powerful and influential. No matter where they fled, the company would find them. So the people on board could not be divided. The most important thing now was how to escape from these waters. If they stayed here, the enemy would surely use weapons to force them to surrender. Then the people on board would be powerless to resist. Meanwhile, Blondie, seeking revenge on Nemo for sinking his ship, had already prepared a detailed capture plan. It was pouring rain at sea, but Blondie was blinded by rage. He ordered the warship to speed up. They must capture Nemo and his group as soon as possible. At the same time, Uncle Beard was arranging his things in the ship. There was a photo that seemed to be a picture of him and Nemo from their school days. Perhaps their relationship was not simple. At this moment, Nemo found Amy. He warned her not to act recklessly again, because he didn't want his crew to get hurt. But Amy said that a lowly person like Nemo had no right to scold a high-ranking aristocrat. As soon as the words were out, Amy regretted them. She actually wanted to apologize, but the words came out wrong. Fortunately, she sincerely apologized to the engineer, and the engineer forgave her. Afterward, the engineer told Amy that he had originally designed the Nautilus for humanity to further explore the oceans. When the company owner approached him, he thought he could finally fulfill his dream. But things didn't go as planned. The great powers still intended to use it as a weapon to expand their influence. The company forced him to install high-explosive torpedoes on the ship. But the greatest design of the Nautilus was not these things. It was its new power supply system. A special device could extract sodium from seawater and then generate electricity through a chemical reaction with sodium-mercury amalgam. To build such a ship, there were many insurmountable difficulties. Fortunately, Nemo helped him a lot. And the name Nautilus was also given by Nemo. He was also a man of misfortune. At that time, the great powers were plundering and killing everywhere. They captured able-bodied men and forced them to work in prisons. Nemo's wife and children were brutally murdered by the great powers. War took everything from him. In the end, he only found the Nautilus shell his daughter had left him. If it weren't for Nemo's escape plan, he would have long since stopped wanting to work for the great powers. After hearing this, Amy felt she had come to know Nemo anew. Soon, everyone started eating dinner. Someone stood up and accused Zhao Hai of stealing, because a lot of food had gone missing recently, so they thought it was most likely done by the light-fingered Zhao Hai. Zhao Hai strongly denied it, saying he would definitely find the culprit. Just then, a crew member told the engineer he heard a strange noise outside. The engineer quickly looked through the periscope. He saw company men on the sea hunting humpback whales. To catch a whale calf, they were using the mother whale as bait. Seeing this, Amy begged Nemo to save the whale. Nemo actually had the same intention. The next second, then Nemo came to the deck. With a big leap, he successfully landed on the mother whale's back. The soldiers immediately fired wildly at Nemo, but their aim was so poor that not a single shot hit. At this point, the bald man on the ship was constantly firing to draw their attention. Nemo took the opportunity to cut the ropes binding the mother whale. The freed mother whale dived straight into the sea. Seeing Nemo also being dragged into the sea, the engineer quickly had someone shut down the engine. Thanks to Nemo's quick reflexes, he managed to swim back up after rescuing the whale. The company men were furious that Nemo had let the mother whale escape. The atmosphere became instantly tense. The company men were relentless, saying they were just doing their jobs for money. They couldn't let him interfere with their livelihood. Nemo really didn't want to waste any more time here. He took off Amy's diamond bracelet. After finally getting rid of the company man, they saw Blondie chasing them in his warship in the distance. It was obvious that their position was exposed while rescuing the whale. For a moment, the crew was all blaming Amy for insisting on saving the whale. Fortunately, Nemo quickly calmed everyone down. To evade Blondie's capture, Nemo quickly ordered the submarine to dive into the water. Then they shut down the engine and held their breath. But Uncle Beard was very experienced. When he saw the lingering ripples on the sea surface, he immediately concluded that the Nautilus was right below. Hearing this, Blondie immediately ordered the crew to listen for underwater sounds. As luck would have it, they happened to hear a dog barking underwater. After confirming the Nautilus was hiding below, Old Bai demanded they destroy the submarine with bombs. Even if it meant blowing up the submarine, he would not allow it to be used by Nemo. Afterward, the soldiers brought several bombs and dropped them into the water, but the position was slightly off. After a loud explosion, the submarine only shook a few times. Seeing that the enemy was trying to bomb them to death, Nemo started the submarine and dived a bit deeper. But Blondie was no fool. He guessed that the submarine must have changed its position, so he ordered the bombs to be dropped deeper. Fortunately, Nemo felt that their current position was still not safe, so he dived a little deeper again. With Blondie's command, the bombs detonated again. Although the submarine avoided a direct hit, it was still affected by the shockwave of the bombs. Several steam pipes in the submarine ruptured. Thanks to the crew's timely closing of several valves, they managed to stabilize the submarine. But the crisis was not over. Nemo quickly dived even deeper. Now at the bottom of the sea, they had no way to retreat. But the good news was, Blondie's bombs couldn't reach them. Just like that, they successfully weathered this crisis. Everyone was very happy. But suddenly, a strange noise came from all around. Everyone rushed to the window to check the situation. But the surrounding water was murky, filled with stirred-up sand and silt. But after looking for a long time, they didn't find anything unusual. Then everyone went back to their duties. Only Amy, who had nothing to do, remained by the window. She was happily playing with the dog when suddenly a tentacle attached itself to the glass. Everyone was instantly stunned. Seeing this, Nemo wanted to step on the gas and flee. But after a series of maneuvers, the submarine didn't move at all. With no other choice, Nemo had to put on a diving suit and go into the sea. The scene before him left him dumbfounded. A giant octopus was firmly wrapped around the submarine. Then, Nemo raised his harpoon, preparing to drive it away. But the octopus just lifted a tentacle and sent him flying. Just as the octopus was about to take the submarine away, at the critical moment, a humpback whale rushed out and bit off the octopus's tentacle. The octopus, in pain, released the submarine. Then it spat out a mouthful of 82-year-old ink and hid in a cave. Nemo looked closely and saw it was the mother and calf whale he had just saved that helped them. It turned out that good deeds are indeed rewarded. At the same time, Zhao Hai noticed the dog was staring at a certain spot. So he decided to go over and see what was unusual there. The next second, meanwhile, Nemo, seeing that the Dreadnought refused to leave, had to discuss a plan with the engineer. At this point, they thought of the unarmed torpedoes on board. An idea instantly came to mind. Then, Nemo arranged for a few men to launch the torpedo. Blondie, who was constantly monitoring, instantly detected the movement underwater. They thought Nemo was escaping in the submarine, so they gave chase at full speed. Seeing this, Nemo immediately told everyone to run. Just then, the dog came over and bit Amy's dress. It seemed to want to lead her somewhere. Amy realized something might be wrong, so she followed the dog to the warehouse. As soon as she opened the door, she ran into a red-coated soldier. At this moment, Amy saw the soldier holding a knife to Zhao Hai's neck, so she quickly started negotiating with him. After some bargaining, Amy promised the soldier that no one would harm him, and that he would be given food to survive. The soldier then released Zhao Hai. It turned out, when Nemo and his group were rebelling, he was about to sneak away, but Brother San hit him with a rifle butt. Just like that, he was knocked out and ended up on the submarine. Actually, he wasn't serving the company voluntarily. To survive, he had no choice. Although he repeatedly insisted he was a good person, Nemo still locked him in the warehouse. Afterward, Nemo discussed the next plan with the others. Blondie would surely come after them once he realized he'd been tricked. But if they headed straight for their destination, their food would definitely not be enough. So now they must first find a place to replenish their supplies. But the great powers had occupied many places. It seemed that apart from ancient cannibal tribes, there were no safe places nearby. Everyone agreed to go to the cannibal tribe to find food. Just like that, they docked the ship and went onto the island. But they hadn't walked far before they were surrounded by a group of soldiers with guns. But from their clothes, they weren't company men. Their leader came out and carefully sized up the people before him. He went up and recognized Nemo and his group as escaped criminals. Then he told his men to lower their guns. He said he also hated that damn company, so they were all friends. Besides, the leader said he had met Nemo before. The two talked for a while. The crew members beside them were stunned. It turned out Nemo was a prince of India. Then, the leader invited them to his palace for a rest. After they had rested, he would prepare ample food for them. Seeing the leader's smooth talk, Nemo didn't trust him and decided to return to the ship first. They would check out the village later. However, hearing the word palace, Amy stepped out. After revealing her identity, she followed the leader to the castle. Afterward, the leader prepared a sumptuous dinner for Amy. He also told her about Nemo's tragic past. At that time, Nemo had gone to study abroad in England. But the East India Company launched an invasion of India. They brutally murdered Nemo's wife and daughter. By the time he returned, it was too late. Instead, he was discovered by soldiers and thrown into prison. Meanwhile, Nemo and the crew could only return to the ship to eat their old rations. But they couldn't go on without food. With no other choice, Nemo decided to go and talk to the leader. The next day, he escorted the red-coated soldier and the crew back to the island. Then Nemo told the crew to stay and count the supplies. He himself got into a carriage heading to the palace. At the same time, the engineer was invited to visit the library. The crew was taken to a feast. The soldier was thrown into a cell. At this moment, the leader found Amy, who knew about engineering. He hoped she could help him fix the ice machine. After Amy left, the leader received Nemo. But now the leader looked grim. He held a photo and began to accuse Nemo's father. It turned out, the leader had met Nemo's father at a conference in London. Now the leader questioned Nemo. Why was his father so weak to agree to cede territory and pay reparations? Nemo was stunned by the question. Fortunately, after he came out, Xiao Hai told Nemo the fault was not his father's, but the fault of the great powers who invaded other people's homes. Awakened, Nemo finally understood. So, he returned to the palace and stole the photo. As luck would have it, the nearby telegraph machine suddenly started clicking. Nemo quickly went over to check. He looked, and what he saw was terrifying. The leader had already sent their location to the company. This leader was truly a wolf in sheep's clothing. Although Nemo had discovered this, the leader had been waiting for him. Then, he ordered Nemo to be thrown in jail. Then he arrogantly announced that the company would arrive soon. The red-coated soldier was very happy to hear this. He quickly revealed his identity. Meanwhile, Brother San and the Bengali boy were eating happily. Suddenly, a big man rushed in to report. He told them that the food the leader gave them was all rotten. However, Brother San was unmoved by this. He said the leader must have made a mistake. Otherwise, why would they be treated so well? So, with no other choice, the big man had to act alone. As luck would have it, he found the food storage warehouse. Looking at the carriage, the big man instantly had a plan. At the same time, Amy was on the floor, searching for the problem for a long time. But she couldn't find the reason why the ice machine was broken. Looking at the ventilation shaft nearby, she realized the problem was most likely below. So she went underground. What she saw was a group of children working hard, chiseling ice. Amy then understood. There was no so-called ice machine. The machine casing above was just for the leader to show off. Seeing the children's miserable state, Amy took them directly to the banquet. The children immediately rushed towards the food. Then they began to eat ravenously. The next second, the leader arrived with his soldiers. He dropped his pretense now. He grabbed a handful of dirt and put it on the little girl's bread. Eat it! At this point, a man nearby begged the leader to spare his daughter. But when the leader saw the men dare to defy him, he immediately ordered the punishment of the father and daughter and all the children. Brother San, who had been watching, could finally sit still no longer. He shouted for the men to take a gun and fight back. He couldn't let others bully his child. Hearing Brother San's words, the oppressed locals could finally take it no more. They all raised their guns. But the leader, seeing this, charged forward menacingly. He thought these people didn't have the courage to shoot. So he snatched their guns one by one and threw them to the ground. Afterward, he went to the slacking soldiers, shouting at them to get to work. The battle was about to ignite. And Brother San was still lecturing everyone on how to resist. But the next second, the soldiers quickly surrounded them. They immediately began to fire wildly at them. Seeing this, the Bengali boy quickly pushed over a table to block the bullets. Brother San found a pot lid to use as a shield. Seeing the soldiers attacking indiscriminately, the locals finally raised their guns to fight back. Meanwhile, the engineer found an ancient book. Flipping through it, he found a treasure inside. It was a nautical chart to Atlantis. Suddenly, the sound of gunshots came from all around. Seeing this, the engineer quickly tore out the chart and tucked it into his clothes. At this moment, Amy was about to rescue Nemo, but she happened to see a company soldier knock out the guard. After handing the keys to Amy, he quickly ran out. Then, with the keys, Amy quickly went to the jail. She let Nemo out. As the two were running out, they suddenly encountered a pair of soldiers. The soldiers immediately opened fire upon seeing them. Amy and the other men were forced onto the upstairs terrace. Seeing this, Nemo quickly grabbed a flag. He slid down from upstairs. There was a soldier on horseback below. Nemo went up and kicked him off the horse. And Amy, who was sliding down, landed steadily on the horse's back. Afterward, Nemo quickly mounted the horse and rode away with Amy. But the soldiers behind also followed. These persistent pests were impossible to shake off. Suddenly, a carriage rushed out, knocking the soldiers behind directly into the water. It turned out to be the big men with the grain cart who arrived just in time to save the day. Meanwhile, Brother San's speech had gathered many locals. "We are the soldiers of the people. We will respect the people." Then, Brother San led the locals towards the castle. They were preparing to capture the leader and force him to surrender. At this moment, Brother San suddenly and quietly turned back and went to the office. He saw the red-coated soldier secretly doing something, so he quickly went over to ask what was going on. The soldier immediately broke the telegraph machine. Seeing this, Brother San quickly checked what he had sent. But before he could read the content, the soldier suddenly shot Brother San. After a while, the leader and his remaining men also hid in the office. There were too many locals outside. Seeing this, a subordinate came over to persuade the leader to surrender. Hearing this, the leader's killing intent flared. With a swift strike, he killed him. Then the leader went to the bookshelf, pressed a mechanism, and opened a secret passage. Before the locals broke down the door, he successfully escaped with the dying Brother San. At the same time, Nemo and his companion escaped on horseback to the seaside. Fortunately, the locals rushed out to help them deal with the pursuing soldiers. Soon, the big men and the maid also arrived in the grain cart. At this point, the big men just wanted to brake quickly, but the horse in front of him paid him no attention. Helpless, he had to unhitch the reins. Just like that, the big men could only watch as the carriage overturned. But this was far from the worst, because Blondie had already arrived in his warship. Seeing this, Nemo quickly called for the crew to board the ship. But the Bengali boy suddenly stopped Nemo. He said that Brother San hadn't caught up. For a moment, no one knew what to do. Just then, the red-coated soldier ran over in a hurry. Seeing him, the crew quickly raised their guns at the soldier. But Amy told Nemo that he had given her the keys to the jail. At this point, Nemo asked him if he had seen Brother San. The soldier told Nemo that Brother San had been captured by the leader. Watching the warship get closer, Nemo had no choice but to order the ship to set sail. The red-coated soldier also boarded the ship. It is unknown what kind of crisis he will bring to the Nautilus. And how will Captain Nemo resolve it?